Theories and definitions of intelligence. The Binet-Simon scale in 1800s. The modern approach to understand the concept of intelligence began with the work of Alfred Binet, a French psychologist from 1857 to 1911, and his colleague Theodore Simon from 1873 to 1961. Binet was hired by the Farish school system to develop tests that would identify children who were not learning and would not benefit from further education. Together, Binet and Simon developed and co-authored a test to roughly measure the intellectual development of young children between the ages of 3 to 12. They wanted to find a way to measure the ability of children to think and reason. Binet developed a test that would ask children to follow commands, copy patterns, and name objects, and put things in order to arrange them properly. From Binet's work, the term intelligence quotients or IQ evolved. The IQ is a ratio of mental age to chronological age, with 100 as the average. So an 8-year-old who passes the test for 8-year-old has an IQ of 100, which is the average for his or her chronological age. Meanwhile, an 8-year-old who passes the test for 10-year-old has an IQ of 10 divide 8 times 100 or 125. The child's IQ is above the average for his or her chronological age. He or she is brighter or more superior than other children with his or her age. Binet-Simon's work influenced the growth of the intelligence testing movement.
Spearman's two-factor theory of intelligence in 1904. Charles Spearman, a British psychologist in 1863 to 1945, advanced the two-factor theory of intelligence G and S. This, the performance of any intellectual act requires some combination of G or general factor which is available as the same individual to the same degree for all intellectual acts, and of S or specific factors which are specific to that act and which varies in strength from one act to another. So his theory suggests that intelligence consists of two factors, the basic and general intelligence, known as G factor, and specific skills and abilities known as the S factor. First, we will have a G factor, stand for general intelligence, is the basic intelligence that you are born with. You don't have to learn this or work on it. It is the inborn intelligence that supports your day-to-day tasks. It is a genetic to a certain extent. These abilities do not need to be polished or improved. They are constant. Also, these abilities vary from person to person. Their intensity is different in each individual. It is Thurman Stanford Binet Individuals Intelligence Test in 1906. Lewis Madison Thurman, an American cognitive psychologist in 1877 to 1956, published a revised and perfect Binet-Simon scale for our American population in 1906. While he was at Stanford University in 1961, he adopted William Stern's suggestion that the ratio between mental and chronological age be taken as a unitary measure of intelligence quotients by 100 to get rid of the decimals. The resulting intelligence quotient became known as the IQ. The classic formula for the IQ is the IQ mental age divided by chronological age by 100. So when you want or when you are going to measure your intelligence, you can use this one. So the Thurman Stanford Binet Individual Intelligence Test is considered as the best available individual test of intelligence. And also Thurman suggested that the gifted children should be identified only, offered tailored instructions, and have access to specially trained teachers. Thurman found that while many of his high IQ subjects were very successful, not all fared as well, and most actually turned out no better than the average. He did find that those who ended up being the most successful tended to rate higher one's self-confidence, perseverance, and goal orientation as children. Thorndike's stimulus response theory. Edward L. Thorndike is an American psychologist in 1874 to 1949, and his students used objective measurements of intelligence on human subjects as early as 1903. During the 1920s, he developed a multi-factor test of intelligence that consisted of completion, arithmetic, vocabulary, and direction test or CAP. The logic behind the CAP test eventually became the foundation of modern intelligence tests. The important distinction among the three broad classes of intellectual functioning. First, we will have the abstract intelligence that is measured by standard intelligence tests, and the second one we will have the mechanical intelligence, which is the ability to visualize relationship among objects and understand how the physical world works. And the third one will have the social intelligence, which is the ability to function successfully in interpersonal situations. When we say the stimulus response theory was proposed by Edward Thorndike, who believed that learning boils down to two things, stimulus and response. In Pavlov's famous experiment, the stimulus was food and the response was the salvation. He believed that all learning depended on the strength of the relationship between the stimulus and response. If that relationship was strong, and response was likely to occur when the stimulus was presented in order to elicit a specific response to a specific stimulus, you had to strengthen its relationship. So Thorndike is cited for his work in what he considered as the two most basic intelligence, the trial and error, and stimulus-response association. On the basis of these relationships, this theory is also called the band theory because the learner arrives at the correct response by trial and error. So it is also called the trial and error theory, and the learning of this type is called learning by trial and error. So this theory lays much emphasis and effort and says that the student should be admired in a correct response, and in case of failure, they should be motivated. L. Thurston Multiple Factors Theory of Intelligence in 1938. Louis L. Thurston was an American psychometrician in 1887 to 1955, who studied intelligence tests and tests of perception through factor analysis. His theory stated that intelligence is made up of several primary mental abilities rather than a general factor and several specific factors. His multiple factors theory of intelligence identified the 7 primary mental abilities as First, the verbal comprehension. When we say a verbal comprehension, it is measured by tests such as vocabulary and reading comprehension. Its ability to understand the verbal analysis and comprehend reading passages. And the second is the word fluency. So the word fluency is measured by tests such as the one that requires the production of words beginning with a particular letter. And the third one, we will have the number facility. The number facility is speed and accuracy of computation solving simple arithmetic word problems. And the fourth, we will have the spatial visualization rather. So this one is the ability to do things such as the mental rotation of the subject, and also it is measured by tests such as the presentation of the geometry followed by several other geometry forms. And the 5, we will have the associate memory. So when we say the associate memory is the ability to requires generalization, reasoning from the specific to the general. It is ability to remember words or objects presented in pairs. And the 6 is the perceptual speed. So this ability to find the number of time a specific letter or appears on printed page. And also it is involved in proofreading, and in rapid recognition of letters and numbers. And the last one, we will have the reasoning. So in this reasoning, it is the ability to solve arithmetic or logical reasoning problem. So according to Thurston theory, he explained that people possess different types of verbal abilities.
Cattell's theory on fluid and crystallized intelligence. Fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. So let us first know what is the fluid intelligence. It is an essential non-verbal and relatively culture-free. It involves adaptive and new learning capabilities related to mental operation and processes on the capacity, decay, selection, and storage of information. This type of intelligence is more dependent on the psychological structures or parts of the brain that are responsible for intellectual behavior. Also, the ability to gather, store, and organize fitted information on your head. Thus, it is an innate ability to learn quickly and usually decreases with age. For example, when you think of a strategy to solve a complicated math problem, you are using your fluid intelligence, while crystallized intelligence, on the other hand, develops through the exercise of fluid intelligence, which is it is a product of the acquisition of knowledge and skills that are strongly independent exposure to culture. And also, it is a factual knowledge. So what is factual knowledge? People can gain crystallized intelligence as they memorize some facts, exposure to new knowledge, and more experiences. Thus, it is your ability to apply knowledge from prior learning that was stored in your head. So, for example, when you solve a math problem, you are using a knowledge for your formulas and symbols is an example of crystallized intelligence. Although both intelligence work together, although fluid and crystallized intelligence are different, they complement each other. For example, an emergency doctor uses both. When a patient arrives, the doctor's fluid intelligence assesses the situation, much like when solving a puzzle. The doctor's fluid intelligence uses clues to arrive at an answer, which is the case of diagnostic. While on the other hand, the doctor's crystallized intelligence provides the previously acquired procedural knowledge needed for cure and treatment, and that is the fluid and crystallized intelligence. Guilford's theory on the structure of the intellect. Guilford is an American psychologist, advanced a general theory of human intelligence whose major application or use is for educational research, personnel selection and placement, and the education of gifted and talented children. The theory of the structure of the intellect, or the SOI, advances that human intelligence is composed of 180 separate mental abilities. The initial count was 120 that have been identified through the factor of analysis. And the mental abilities are composites of 3 separate dimensions, namely the content, operation, and product. So there are 4 types of the contents. Let us know first. That is, first, the figural, or the properties of stimuli experienced through the senses of visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, and kinesthetic. For example, shapes and forms, sizes, colors, sounds, taste, temperature, intensity, and volume. That is the example of figural. And second, the symbolic, or letters, numbers, symbols, and designs. The symbolic is what we call the letters, numbers, symbols, and design. And third, semantic. It is a words and ideas. And the fourth is behavioral, or action and expresses of thoughts and ideas. And there are the 5 kinds of operations, namely cognition, or the ability to gain, recognize, and discover knowledge. The second is memory, or the ability to retain, store, retrieve, and recall the contents of thoughts. Third, divergent production, or the ability to produce a variety of ideas or solution to a problem. Fourth, convergent production, or the ability to produce a single base solution to a problem. And plus the evaluation, or the ability to render judgment and decide whether the intellectual contents are correct or wrong, good or bad. While on the other hand, there are 6 kinds of products, namely units, and units is what we call that come in single number, letter, or word, and second, classes, which is a higher order and concept. The third is relation. It is a connection between and among classes and concepts. System, the process of ordering or classification of relation. And number 5, transformation, the process of altering or restructuring of intellectual content. And the last is the implication, the process of making inferences from separate pieces of information. Sternberg's hierarchic theory of intelligence. Robert Sternberg of Yale University theorized that intelligence is a fixed capacity of a person, hence with higher intellectual capabilities, as in the case with children and youth, which are gifted and talented, almost every task can be achieved at a high level performance. The capabilities that underlie intelligence will enable a highly intelligent child at any age to do than his peers and age mates. Intellectual abilities may increase with age, given the supportive environment and effective teaching conditions. There are three main parts of dimensions, namely contextual intelligence, that is emphasizes intelligence in its socio-cultural context. Thus, intelligence for a child requires adaptive behavior for children's basic cognition skills according to Giselle, that is not required of an older person. Similarly, it may be stated that intelligence for a Filipino child, especially those who are derived of the basic needs, requires adaptive behavior that is not required of an American child. Experiential intelligence. It emphasizes insights and the ability to formulate new ideas and combine seemingly unrelated facts or information. So, Sternberg emphasized the role of the experiences. So, he says that the habitual, highly practiced ways of dealing with the environment that are not true indicators of intelligence. Rather, it is a way of a person responds to an event that is new, novel, unexpected, that shows a person how smart he or she is. It makes a person's ability to apply their existing knowledge to new problems. That is the experiential intelligence. While on the other hand, the componential intelligence, it emphasizes the effectiveness of information processing. He defines the component as the underlying cognitive mechanism that carry out the adaptive behavior to novel situation. The cognitive mechanism are equivalent to the skills and knowledge and competencies that a person would have acquired mainly through education and experience. It involves the ability to think critically and analytically. Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. Howard Gardner is a psychological and professor at Harvard University, Graduate School of Education, and director of Project Zero. He did a massive synthesis of a lot of research, including brain research, evolutionary research, and genetic research, where he broadened the definition of intelligence and outlined several distinct types of intellectual competencies. He further argues that we may all have these different intelligences, but our profile of this intelligence may differ in individual based on genetics or experience. It is important to note that Gardner defines intelligence as a biopsychological potential to process information that can be activated in a cultural settings to solve problems or create products that are of value in a culture. To capture all the full range of abilities and talents that people possess, Gardner theorizes that people do not have just an intellectual capacity, they have many kinds of intelligence, which is the musical, interpersonal, spatial, visual, linguistic intelligence.